My name is Joshua. This is the Power Recovery YouTube channel, and today we are joined by the iconic Alan Aragon. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, man. We're going to be talking about a variety of things to do with health, nutrition, and in particular, we're going to be talking about some of the topics out of Alan's new book, which is called Flexible Dieting. I highly recommend people get this. I think it's a landmark. I think when I checked, Alan, there's like 500 references. I don't know if that is
Yeah.
somewhere in that ballpark. So
569, maybe 568, something like that.
cool,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So it's very data driven. It's very creatively written as well. So it is put in a very kind of like entertaining and very understandable way. So I highly recommend people get it. So to start with, could you just tell
Thank
people,
you
because
so much, man. I appreciate that, Joshua. And I appreciate you.
thank
Oh,
you,
you know
Alan.
what? You're cutting out. You cut out a little bit. So
Okay.
sorry. I missed your last sentence.
No worries at all. No worries, Alan. Please let me know if it does cut out. We'll try and reconvene. So,
Okay.
um, but yeah, for people who might not know who you are just yet, which I find very hard to believe, for people who don't know, could you give us just a brief synopsis of who you are, your history, and what led you to your calling specifically in nutrition?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show, Joshua. It is a real pleasure to be here. And I'm always just appreciative of folks who have followed my work for a very long time, as you have. And it's been an interesting and very adventurous journey through the fitness realm, and just seeing how things evolve over the decades. So, how I got started in this was way back, like 30 years ago. Well, actually, almost exactly 30 years ago, and just noticing that there is a nutritional component to looking a certain way. Being a kid, being into comic book superheroes and seeing guys looking like that on magazine covers, it really gets your attention. And you want to figure out, gosh, how I didn't even know that was possible. How can that be achieved? And then, of course, you find out there's a little bit more than just training and nutrition involved with looking like the guys on the magazine covers. But the nutrition element and the training elements really interested me, and I had this winding journey through an art major, and then um, after almost 2 years in that major, I jumped into the nutrition major, figuring I was going to stay in personal training. But then I discovered I had a love for teaching and writing, um, and so in 2013, this is fast forwarding a couple decades. In 2013, I was invited onto a research project with Brad Schoenfeld. And from that point, my formal research career started. And so I've just been banging away at that. And in between those 2 points, the early days of training and my research career, I did nutritional counseling as well as personal training. And I still do coaching on the side on a very part-time basis as much as I can fit it in. Um, but as far as my role in the industry, I would say I'm one of the originators or pioneers of the evidence-based approach, not in medicine, but in fitness, because evidence-based practice it predated the fitness industry. So I sort of was one of the few guys who brought EBP to fitness.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I love that, Alan. Yeah, I love that. I, I think that was one of the first things I noticed about you. I think I came across your work. I think it must have been 2012. I think it was with the Ian McCarthy video on sugar is toxic. This was, it was such a crazy time in that era because, I mean, personally for me, I was the like ultimate bro, at least nutrition wise.
Mhm.
I did the five foods at work. I did it to the nth degree. I was very, very proud that I followed the five foods that worked. Um, and it was a very confusing time because there was a lot of bro science and it was just becoming a little bit more surfaced at the time. And it was honestly, I think because of your work and various other people like Eric Helms and it really opened my eyes, and it honestly really changed my life. I think I was in a really, really bad place with all this stuff. I was very, I would arguably say very orthorexic, you know, it to the nth degree. No sugars, no dairy, no fruits, no certain colored vegetables. Time I had a timer on my phone, having meals every 2, 3 hours. Did like the whole 9 yards, no carbs before bed. And it was quite lovely finding out about your work and knowing that you've done so much work in this evidence-based field of health and nutrition. And it's really honestly broadened my eyes, and it's really influenced my work and the work I love doing. And so thank you very much for that. And I kind of want to start there really because it's interesting in terms of the book that you've written on flexible dieting, because it's so counter narrative to the kind of mainstream narrative that we are told about clean eating. And I know you allude to a lot of stuff in the book of why it is so prominent that we really confuse ourselves with certain things with nutrition, why it is quite a confusing landscape. I think you used the term, it's a minefield of disinformation in the book. I just wondered, in terms of why it is we are so, it's almost indoctrinated in our culture with clean eating. Why is it that we think that we have to have, air quote, the right foods? It needs to be like minimally processed at all times and all circumstances, no deviation from that. Why is that, you might think?
That's a really good question. It's a really provocative question we can speculate over. I think that, and I might be wrong about this, but I think that people feel so not in control with so many aspects of their lives. They so feel like they're at the mercy of their environment and the mercy of the elements, the mercy of their relationships, um, the mercy of whatever it might be, their geography, their the various elements in their lifestyle and their environment that they just can't control. But if we can control every little detail about the foods, maybe that makes us feel better. Maybe that makes us feel like we have a sense of agency and autonomy over one little thing for once. And some people choose food to try to gain every little bit of dominion that they can. So maybe they feel more in control if they can only have organic foods, or more in control if they can have enough strength to avoid this, that, and the other food. But a lot of it is, well, it's misinformed, and a lot of it is unnecessary, and some of it is actually harmful. And almost all of it, if you just look at it from the perspective of chasing perfection, is just not a healthy thing to do psychologically. And when you look at let's say the top 10 countries who have the longest life expectancy in the world, you go down the list, you look at the top 10, and you try to compare their cuisine, and it's really all over the place. Like, for example, the Swiss are number 4. I would invite you to do a Google on what do the Swiss eat. You're going to see a bunch of dairy, bread, butter, these processed meats. So, I mean, but it goes on down the line with the entire top 10. There's a huge diversity of food selection. There's a huge range of these engineered and actually moderately highly processed types of foods. Everything from refined carbohydrate sources to processed meat types of stuff to desserts. And it gave me the impression when I looked up the top 10 longevity champs on the planet, country wise, it gave me the impression that there is such a diversity of food selection that it's possible we're giving nutrition and diet too much of a health halo in terms of the myriad of things that contribute to health. So with diet and nutrition being one of them, and being important, of course, there's probably many, 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 many other things that have just as important or even higher impact on health and longevity than our diets. So I think that was an interesting thing. But yeah, that relates to people being misinformed about the magnitude of effects of the particular foods that they choose, and also having the wrong perception of the hierarchy of importance in terms of what makes a healthy lifestyle, and underneath that, what makes a diet healthy. So there is a lot of misinformation out there, and people don't necessarily have the knowledge or the scientific literacy, as it were, to distinguish between what's high quality information and what's just speculation. And a lot of times that with people with huge platforms put out claims with such passion and conviction that they don't come off as they're speculating. And people don't always have the diligence to say, I'm going to speculate about this, or it's been my observations that. They just come out with the claim, and people believe it. So there's a lot of confusion out there.
For sure, yeah, that's a really good answer, Alan. Yeah, I really love the part in your book where you discuss the study looking at the credentials of what you were just kind of alluding to then about the people, the humongous platforms, and they have these humongous marketing campaigns, and they have the backlog of massive amounts of fans and people working with them. So when they do put out something, it is really heard by the masses. And I wonder if you could just maybe just speak about that. It's actually one of my favorite parts in the book that I've read so far. You talk about the different kind of influencers in the field of nutrition and the top selling books. And it is unbelievably shocking reading that and so debilitating. If you could just elaborate on that for us.
Yeah. Yeah. The majority of the top 100 best-selling diet books commercially are the majority are physicians. I'm talking almost 40% of the top 100 best-selling diet books are written by physicians. And then the rest are a mix of various professions, sometimes health related, sometimes not. And registered dietitians only write 6% of the top selling of the best selling diet books. So
which is crazy. Yeah.
And it's crazy, but the thing is, people, the general public tends to view physicians as omniscient. They know everything because they're doctors, and they just make the leap that doctors know everything about nutrition. But a lot of the general public is unaware that the nutrition curriculum for physicians, their requirements for nutrition courses, boils down to maybe a semester or two. Wow. And like literally a couple of nutrition classes. And when you compare that to 5-6 straight years of just pounding nutrition classes and various other related courses that registered dietitians go through, it's just, there's no comparison. I mean, just a tiny fraction of what registered dietitians and the equivalents in different countries that physicians are required to learn. And it's kind of just the way it is. I mean, doctors are innately intelligent people. If they wanted to become registered dietitians, they could easily do it, a lot of them. But they don't. They just would rather be physicians for one reason or another. Some reasons stronger than others. But the fact of the matter is they along with that high degree of innate intelligence comes, not with everybody, but with a lot of them, comes a high degree of self-confidence and ego and downright hubris. So you have that combination of intelligence and hubris. And then when these guys decide, hey, I've got a great idea, I'm going to write a diet book about it, it ends up being 25 to 50% brilliant, along with the rest coming from, well, just speculative bullcrap. And that's dangerous to have a book. And some people would even say, Alan, you're being a little too generous there. Maybe doctors who write diet books have just sort of like a breakdown of 10% good stuff and then 90% bull crap. And that's the problem. That's the problem. It's the hubris and the intelligence and the delivery of this material that is so confident and convincing that people believe it. And if the doctor is a charismatic guy, and he knows how to deliver a message with passion and power, and people will latch onto that. People are looking for the magic bullet. People are looking for the simple solution that everybody can, and that will work really quickly. And they latch onto it. They buy in. It's very tough to tell the general public that A, you're wrong about most of the stuff. B, you have to relearn a certain amount of fundamentals in order to have the right mindset as you go through your journey. And C, it's going to be difficult as hell, and it's going to take a long friggin' time. So if you try to sell that idea, it's not going to be easy to come across and sell that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a great answer. It's interesting you mentioned this, and I think it's so true. Yeah, if someone is very charismatic and appears very powerful, and they have a lot of letters after the name, all of a sudden they seem almost messiah-like, and people are very quick to. It's interesting with all the subjects on the face of the earth that with nutrition, compared to like mathematics or geography, where it's very logic driven and people will, respond with logic and a lot of rational thought. With nutrition, it seems like people can be completely sometimes, and this isn't like to put anyone down who's, like you were saying, then learning the fundamentals or anything like that. But there is a tendency with nutrition compared to other subjects that I've noticed that people can become slightly delusional and believe very nonsensical things very, very quickly and take them to the absolute extreme. Now, and I say that from experience because I was also one of the people. But why do you think that is, Alan? Is it just because of this kind of free floating, kind of poor circulation of information? Is it like we were saying then, that the people with these massive platforms are just generally very convincing? They have the marketing, they've got the salesmanship of it. Why is it we become so emotionally hijacked when it become around nutrition and eating?
That's a good question. I think that nutrition and eating itself is an emotional thing. There is an inextricable psychological component to just eating. And everybody has to eat to survive. And so we are simply wired to attach very strong primal psychological, emotional connections to foods and eating and how we eat and why we eat and how much and what foods. I remember in the early 1990s or mid 90s when the Zone diet came out by a guy named Barry Sears. So he was actually the first author to push the insulin angle. So a lot of people give Gary Taubes credit for the carbohydrate insulin hypothesis or the carbohydrate insulin model of obesity. But Barry Sears doesn't get enough credit for coming up with that damn bro science. So,
so that's where it came from. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Barry Sears said that in order to be healthy, we need to control our insulin output. In order to control insulin, we need to make sure every meal is 40% carbohydrates, 30% protein, and 30% fat. 40, 30, 30 every meal. Why? Because we got to control insulin. And of that 40% carbs, everything has to be low glycemic index. Why? Because we got to control insulin. And so he was Mr. Control Insulin. But when you did the math on the various diet plans in his book, they all came out to like 12 to 1500 calories. So,
That's it. Yeah.
he's effectively, like every other diet book out there, is promoting a way to ultimately to eat less by the end of the day. And the lay public just does not have the scientific literacy and the foundational knowledge about nutrition and how the body operates with various states of energy balance. They just don't have that knowledge to be able to grasp how these diets work. And even if you tell the average layperson that doesn't matter what diet you're talking about, all of these diets corner you into a caloric deficit. They won't really know even what you're talking about when you say caloric deficit. You still have to explain that. And so one of the shortcomings of folks like you and me and folks in our space is that we underestimate how little the lay public understands. And we underestimate how much we have to dumb down our messages and make it palatable and understandable to the lay public. And we also underestimate how we have to tie everything together with steps that are simple enough for them to even want to begin to try to take. So it's a tough road, man. We have a tall order in front of us.
For sure, yeah, definitely. I think that's so true what you said. I mean, most of my clientele, when I'm doing a lot of consulting work, has never been, bodybuilders or physique athletes. It has always been, the full-time mum of 3 kids, or the dad's working 60 hours a week, and they're actually the clients I actually really enjoy working with, because it's pretty impressive when they become, like Superman or Superwoman, and get in the best shape doing all this other stuff. So, but yeah, it's so true, and you do have to find these kind of very creative and very innovative ways of presenting, essentially a lot of the science, but in a translatable way. And catching on from that, Alan, like just tying it to your book and stuff, with flexible dieting, and for the layperson, how would you best simplify that term for anyone who is unfamiliar with it so far?
Sure. Flexible dieting is the concept that there's no best single diet for everybody. It's that concept. What we have are foods and the nutrition that they contain, the energy and the nutrition that they contain. That's what we've got. There are certain things that are a bit more universal, and other things that are a lot more negotiable. So the less negotiable, more universal things are just hitting certain protein requirements. There are certain ranges of protein intakes that are going to be less negotiable for active people and athletes. And on down the line with the general public with no particular athletic goals, they still need to hit certain minimums of protein intake. And then you have carbohydrates and fat. That is all highly negotiable, highly dependent on the goal and the preferences and the tolerances of the individual. And so that right there is a facet of flexible dieting that people may need to spend some time trying to grasp and trying to learn. But with that little bit comes the message that whether you love high carb, low fat, or low carb, high fat, honestly, that's up to you. It doesn't matter. You can go really low fat if you want, or you go really high fat if you want. And there are conversations within the within those two models, because if you go really high carb, but all you're eating for your carbohydrate source is, let's say, sugar sweetened beverages, well, there's obviously a problem there. If you want to go really high fat, but all you're doing is loading up on butter then there's some health issues there. So food selection is another part of the flexible dieting model. And food selection is important, but it's not pushed to a perfectionistic degree because A, that doesn't exist. And B, everybody's, appropriate foods or foods that they should be filling their diet with, everybody's going to have a different set of foods because everybody has different preferences. So if you say that fruits are an important part of a diet that seeks to optimize health, that's a true statement. But if you say that everybody's got to eat berries or everybody's got to avoid bananas, well, those are false statements. So there's different things to learn about flexible dieting. Now, I guess it's important to point out that the current culture automatically equates flexible dieting with counting macros or counting grams of protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And that is not a true definition. So flexible dieting, as it appeared originally in the peer-reviewed literature, was described as a cognitive style of dietary restraint. So in other words, a particular type of dietary control. So we've got flexible dietary control and we've got rigid dietary control. And flexible dietary control is characterized by a non-dichotomous approach to foods and dieting. So there's no good and evil foods. It's not black and white. Dieting is not an all or nothing process. So that's what flexible dieting is. Rigid dieting is black and white. There are good and evil foods, and it is all or nothing. We're all in, or you screwed up a little, that you've blown the whole thing. Yeah. So that's rigid dieting, and rigid dieting is actually associated with less favorable outcomes in terms of health and body weight and body composition and weight loss maintenance as well. And this has been a very consistent observation in the literature. And so that's why it makes me chuckle a little bit, and I get amused when people equate punching macrograms into an app with the concept of flexible dieting, because that's not what it was. Now, I want to qualify that by saying being very granular and very quantitative and very micromanagey with your macronutrient grams is an option under the umbrella of flexible dieting. Because here's the thing that people really need to grasp. Flexible dieting accommodates various degrees of rigidity, if you will. So flexible dieting really, if I could maybe simplify it in a different way, flexible dieting means the flexibility of the approach to dieting. That's what real flexible dieting is. Some people will prefer punching grams into the app, and they will be able to stick to that long term and thrive on it because they enjoy it. They're weirdos, but let's give them their joy. Everybody is entitled to their joy. Other folks may or may not want to even experience that type of learning process. I think it's helpful. I think it's helpful for people to know the values, the nutrient and energy values of foods. I think it's a valuable skill for a lot of people, especially in this industry. However, some people actually in the long term would prefer to and do much better on much more simplistic and qualitative and habit-based guidelines for eating instead of quantifying everything. And that is fine too. You have that whole spectrum, and you have those two sides, and you have everything in between, where maybe the in-between thing is somebody who is on a particular brotacular journey, but they already have done they know what the nutrient values are of the typical foods and portions that they tend to typically eat. And they want to wean off of being so micromanagey because now it's stressing them out. So now in the middle, they maybe just have a floating idea of how much protein they need to take in by the end of the day. And then everything else is somewhat fluid. And if they're maintaining their performance and other markers of body composition are staying pretty stable, then they know that they're headed in the right direction with respect to their goals. So there is a whole continuum of how to look at flexible and qualitative types of approach, loose and qualitative types of approach, and other approaches that are more quantitative and precise. And this is all under the umbrella of flexible dieting, because it is the flexibility of approach. And here's another concept I want to throw in there. There are some people, whether competitive or recreational athletes, that can cycle in and out of the different sides of the spectrum depending on what the season is. Are they in prep for something? Are they in preseason for something? Or are they kind of off season and kind of taking a physical and psychological break from the grind of the program? You can vacillate in and out of these degrees of precision, and that's within flexible dieting as well. So there are quite a bit of elements to flexible dieting, and that's why the book is 300 pages.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Alan. Yeah, I really love that. I love that you mentioned that about tracking, because I had found this to be a bit of annoyance, really, because I found that if it fits your macros crowd, it was almost becoming, because of the severity of the tracking and the constant weighing of foods and tracking numbers. I think people had lost the whole approach around flexible diet, and the attitudes and the beliefs around food, and the approaches of that. You don't necessarily have to track so rigidly that it has to be the exact fat intake. It has to be the exact same carbohydrate intake every day. To me, that was just a way of organizing the diet in terms of the composition of it and the calories. And personally, for me, I'm actually one of the neurotic people who actually likes to track the food, but typically if I'm maintaining or gaining, I loosen it up a little bit, and just track maybe protein and fiber, for example. I'm actually just done a cut myself recently, and lost 20 pounds. I had the horrible lockdown. Yeah, it's a lot of weight. Yeah. I was really struggling because of the whole lockdowns and being at home all the time, and the being around food all the time, and eventually managed to get it off. And it's been the most enjoyable cut I have ever done in my life. I've done no cardio, and if I have, it's been very small. I actually hired a coach to organize all my training for me, so I don't have to think about it. It's been outsourced. I've just slowly, if I've stalled or I feel as though I'm stalling, I've just incrementally just lowered my calories, very, very small, nothing drastic. And it has taken a while, and I have done it with diet breaks and structured refeeds and stuff like this. But I've enjoyed the process so much more. And to be honest, I'm feeling it a little bit more towards the end now. I'm on occasion slightly hungry, but it's been the most enjoyable, because I feel as though it's been the most stress-free I've been, and it's taken a long time to get to that point. But I've definitely, for the last how many years, how long I've been watching your interviews, Alan, I've tried to take them pearls of wisdom with me, and it has honestly really helped. And I honestly wish the best for this book, because I feel as though, with nutrition, like we were saying, it is a very confusing landscape. There's a lot of sharks. There's a lot of people doing the kind of kinky sex games of health and fitness. They're prescribing all these weird and wacky gadgets and supplements, and without the evidence to back it up. But I feel as though with your work, Alan, it is so validated by the data. It's very hard to disagree with it completely. You know what I mean? So, I know. So, but yeah. So, in terms of Alan, I know we're a bit rushed for time now, due to Zoom. In a closing message, why do you think it is people should get your book, and what would they gain from it primarily?
My goal is to write the ultimate one-stop shop for everything about nutrition that you need to know to optimize body composition, so fat loss and or muscle gain, and athletic performance, whether it be strength gain or endurance gain or anything in between. So essentially a one-stop shop encyclopedic type of book, but still readable, still not quite like a textbook. It's something that anybody off the street can pick up and read and understand. Um, I don't delve into a lot of clinical nutrition. So if you want to, a whole chapter on the effect of diet on blood lipids, for example, that's not going to be in the book. But fat loss, muscle gain, athletic performance, that's all in the book. And my goal was to kind of write the book that doesn't exist out there and didn't really exist while I was coming up in the curriculum. So
Yeah.
Practitioners will love it. Students will love it. Lay folks love it. I don't know. I really did want to just write just the most solid evidence-based book on non-clinical nutrition, on the clinical side. And I think I've accomplished that. So
it is definitely, honestly, I really enjoyed this book. I'm dyslexic and struggle reading, and I've honestly not put the book down. I'm slow but surely getting through it. And definitely recommend people get it. Flexible Dying by Alan Aragon. I definitely recommend it. Alan, thank you so much for your time, bro. I've honestly really enjoyed this. I'm sorry we're a bit kind of pressed for time right now, but I honestly wish you best with the book. Hopefully get to speak to you again at some other point, and wish you all the success in the world, my friend, and hopefully speak to you soon.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Joshua. Keep doing an amazing job at what you do. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening.